Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Bonjour, mesdames et messieurs. Bienvenido, señoras y señores. My name is Sung-Hoon Kim, and I'll be your MC for this event. I'd like to welcome you all to the International Civil Aviation Organization's 40th Assembly. Over the next 9 days, we have 67 presentations for you from aviation professionals within ICAO and the private industry. I'd like to remind you that we're coming to you live, and to shut off your phones, put them on vibrating modes. For questions, you can please come up to the mic. Whether you want to do it during the presentation or after the presentation, I will leave it to each individual presenter. And for those who want to be able to access this information on YouTube, please make sure to drop your business cards in the back. Now, as all of you are aware, just slightly half the population in the world are made up of women. And to tell you more about the role of gender in the future of aviation, please welcome one of the hardest working and most talented people that we have here at ICAO, Ms. Glenda Newton, HR Officer for Gender and Outreach. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Welcome, and thank you for attending this Gender in Aviation presentation. When I started to prepare for this, I decided that I would look at TED Talks and see what I could find in regards to gender and aviation combined. I found nothing. If you look up gender, you'll find gender. If you look up aviation, you'll find aviation. You will not find anything, or I did not find anything, in regards to gender and aviation as a theme or a subject or a concern. So, moving forward, why are we here? What do we know? I think we would all agree that the number of women in aviation is low. The estimate is approximately 6% of the top-level industry providers as pilots, 6% are women. Across the globe, approximately 2% of commercial pilots are women. Yet the cabin crew is 90%. Why is this? We have issues in trying to decide what the numbers actually are because we don't have gender disaggregated data. It's almost non-existent. So either we don't know or we don't have the numbers to prove, so we don't have a benchmark from which to measure. So the potential pool of female candidates is unknown, and the industry itself is long-standing male domination. So you're in a male-dominated environment, you don't know how many women you are, we all agree that they're low, but why do we care? Why is there current hype over this? Why is there current interest in regards to women working in aviation? Well, it is in some of the data. It's in the forecasting data. Air transportation is expected to grow exponentially in the next decade. In 2017, the sector supported 65.5 million people globally, a huge employment. And it contributed 2.7 USD in gross domestic product. 2018, we saw 120,000 flights take off every day. We moved 12 million passengers and $18.8 billion of goods. It's enormous. Take all those numbers and put them to the power 2. And that's where we're going to be in 10 years. So how are we going to sustain the network? How are we going to sustain all the planes that are going to be in the air and all of this extra activity that relates to planes taking off and landing? Let's look at the forecasts in regards to pilots. In regards to pilots, currently, or in 2017, we had approximately 360,000 commercial pilots in the world. By 2037, we expect 165,000 of them to still be employed. The prediction is we need 500,000 more. That's more than we have now. How, in the next 20 years, are we going to create 500,000 pilots globally? What country has a system in place for the training, etc., for these pilots? The countries demanding those pilots, I'll have you have a look. China and the United States are at the top, but if you glance quickly at the screen, you can see that there are 10 top countries there. The top two being in double digits. Very important. 16% increase by 2037. Of course, pilots increase, flights increase, air traffic controllers are going to have to increase. We currently have 85,000. 54,000 of them will be sustained to 2037. However, we will need approximately 106,000 more air traffic controllers in the next 20 years. Again, more than we have now. And if we look at the countries where the demands are, again, China and the United States are in the double digits, but there are countries in there, if you glance quickly, which you might not expect that level of growth or to be in the top 10. Maintenance technicians and cabin crew. We will need approximately 666,000 more maintenance technicians and almost 1 million more cabin crew. Where are all these people going to come from? Well, how will aviation bet? We're looking at the pool of female candidates. Aviation will hugely benefit if they tap into the pool, the 50% of the population, which could contribute to the sustainable aviation field. It has been categorically proven that having greater diversity in your workforce will obviously double your talent pool. That's obvious. But productivity and innovation will improve. Corporations understand that they are far more competitive. Having women in the boardroom makes them more successful. It brings another perspective. The work environment improves when you have diversity. With this diversity, if the work environment is better, you're going to have higher level of employee engagement. People will speak out, people will contribute, and which is most important is you'll have greater retention. You'll have less turnover. People will stay in your organization for longer. The aviation industry is going to experience growth like it's never seen it before. It is going to be a highly, it already is, but a much more highly competitive environment. Organizations are going to have to find ways to keep people in their organization, or they will struggle. So we should probably start looking at how to get the next generation into aviation. This is where it has to start, if it hasn't started already. A good YouTube video, which you can go to, which looks at how kindergarten students currently see certain professions, and one of them is a pilot. And little boys and little girls see a pilot as a man in a nice uniform who flies a plane. It's ingrained in us. So those investing in STEM programs is important, right? Getting kids into science, technology, engineering, and maths. This will encourage them to be possibly part of an aviation field. It's been demonstrated to me and others that exposure and engagement, especially for young girls, is important. Make it real. Let them walk through a plane. In Canada, it used to be, I'm Canadian, when I was in grade 4, our field trip was to the airport in Montreal. And then in the 70s, we walked through a Boeing 747. I still remember it. It was awesome, right? So make it real, feel it, touch it. Encourage scholarship programs. Ensure that girls have access and are enabled to pursue an education. And gender mainstreaming. Gender mainstreaming in regards to ensuring that every single document, every single publication, every single policy which is created has a gender lens to it. I recently attended the Annex 1 conference, and we were talking about, which is licensing for pilots, and it looked at the competencies. The competencies were written quite some time ago, and one of the gentlemen at the table pointed out, because he was one of those people, the people who wrote the competencies around the table were all men. They're thinking about going back and reviewing them and having a more diverse group of people looking at the competencies. But how do we attract women to aviation? And then when a woman walks into a male-dominated environment, many can survive. Most have a father and brothers and men around them. But if the organization is not inclusive to women, then they won't be retained. So gender needs to be part of an organizational strategy, and it's not a box-ticking exercise. It's actually changing the philosophy and the culture of the organization. So this is difficult. This is very difficult in a male-dominated environment. We need a cultural shift of what industry is represented as gender roles. Men wearing pilots' uniforms and women being flight attendants. This is, and this is changing, right? Making your, anything that comes out of your organization gender neutral. It's not a he. Every single document shouldn't be written, he did this or he did that or he. And is your recruitment process truly fair? Have your panel members, you know, when you get up to the senior level of organizations, it's undoubtedly the people who are assessing the candidates or who have applied to an advertisement below them. The interviewers are often men. So you have a whole panel of men. You would like to have a panel which would be diverse in itself, but that may not be possible. Are these men trained and able to assess women in an interview equally to a man? So what are the biases? Gender mainstreaming. How do you eliminate the conscious and unconscious biases which exist within the culture of an organization? And let's go beyond this. An example for member states and how they can contribute to changing this environment is the US House of Representatives recently supported a bill, and the bill is to create opportunities for women in the aviation industry. It's serious business. They created a Women in Advisory, Aviation Advisory Board, and this advisory board is to create strategies which would identify trends that encourage or discourage women from pursuing careers in aviation, coordinates efforts to support women pursuing careers in aviation, creates opportunities to expand existing scholarships, and enhances training, mentorship, education, and outreach to women. So how do member states make a difference? Member states are the key to making the difference in this issue. Member states need to increase the number of women in the global aviation sector by encouraging greater pools within their state, which is what the US has put into legislation. Member states need to look at their legislation as well. If you have legislation that women can't work after dark, or women can't be unaccompanied, or women can't pursue sciences, there's legislations that discourage women from going into the aviation sector. We need to look at these more clearly. The wage gap. The wage gap in aviation seems to be quite large between men and women. This needs to be eradicated. We need to strengthen industry awareness globally. The industry awareness looks at the glass ceiling, which seems to exist across the board. And it's not just in aviation, it's in multiple different areas. And then I think we need to develop partnerships, a community of practice in the private and the public sectors and with organizations like our own ICAO to assist in attracting more women into aviation. And at the end of the day, from a UN perspective, UN and equality is a basic human right. So thank you very much. Are there any questions? No questions?
Well,
Thank you. Thank you very much, everyone.